In the fading light of a Chicago autumn evening, Lee Min-ho stood at the edge of Lincoln Park, watching a world he'd long ago stopped believing in. The park stretched before him like a memory of innocence, children laughing, mothers calling, lives untouched by the darkness he commanded. At 42, he'd built an empire from nothing, clawed his way from Seoul's streets to Chicago's shadows, and earned a reputation that made grown men whisper his name like a prayer for mercy. But today something stopped him cold. A flash of gold caught his eye. A little black girl, no more than 9, sat on a bench near the playground entrance, her small fingers tracing the pendant of a necklace that hung around her neck. Min-ho's breath caught. The design was unmistakable. A Korean phoenix rising from flames wrought in gold and jade, with a ruby eye that had taken master craftsmen 3 months to perfect. It was the necklace his grandmother had given him the day he left Seoul. The necklace he'd lost 5 years ago. The necklace worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. Min-ho's hand instinctively moved to his neck, where the necklace should have been. 5 years. 5 years since he'd lost it in a deal gone wrong in this very neighborhood. He'd searched for months, offered rewards that could have bought houses, threatened people who'd never threatened him back. Eventually, he'd accepted it was gone, stolen, sold, melted down for quick cash. But here it was, on a child. He studied the girl more carefully. She wore clothes that had seen too many washes, jeans with patches on the knees, sneakers held together with determination and duct tape. Her hair was pulled back in neat cornrows, despite the fraying edges of her jacket. She hummed to herself, swinging her legs, utterly unaware of the fortune resting against her collarbones. Min-ho's security detail tensed as he stepped forward. They knew that walk, purposeful, predatory, the stride of a man who'd decided something and wouldn't be deterred. But he raised a hand, stopping them 20 feet back. "Stay here," he commanded in Korean. His second-in-command, Jae-sung, nodded, but kept his hand near his concealed weapon. Min-ho approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. Years of reading people told him this child had been taught to fear strangers, especially men like him. Expensive suit, cold eyes, the kind of presence that announced danger without a word spoken. "Hello," he said, his accented English softer than usual. The girl looked up, her brown eyes widening. She clutched her small backpack tighter. "Hi." "That's a beautiful necklace." Her hand flew to the pendant protectively. "My mama gave it to me." Min-ho's jaw tightened, but he kept his expression neutral. "Your mama has good taste. Where did she find something so special?" The girl's gaze darted toward the street, then back to him. Smart kid, cautious, good. "I'm not supposed to talk to strangers." "Smart rule," Min-ho acknowledged. "Is your mama nearby?" Before the girl could answer, a woman's voice cut through the early evening air. "Amara, step away from that man!" Min-ho turned to see a black woman rushing toward them, her work uniform, a grocery store vest over jeans, identifying her before her protective fury did. She was in her early 30s, moving with the exhausted determination of someone who'd worked a double shift and still had a child to protect. Serena Johnson had seen men like this before. Expensive suit, cold demeanor, the kind of man who didn't belong in her neighborhood unless he was collecting debts or causing trouble. She positioned herself between him and Amara, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Whatever you want, we don't have it," she said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. Min-ho studied her. Tired eyes, calloused hands, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that came from working 3 jobs and still coming up short. But fierce, protective, a lioness with her cub. "I don't want trouble," he said carefully. "I only want to ask about the necklace your daughter is wearing." Serena's hand went to Amara's shoulder, pulling her closer. "What about it? Where did you get it?" She hesitated. The truth might sound like theft, but lying to this man felt more dangerous. "I found it, a few years ago, in the alley behind my building. I've been holding on to it, hoping to find the owner." Min-ho's eyebrows lifted fractionally. "You found it years ago and kept it." "I figured someone would be looking for it," Serena said defensively. "It looked important, personal." "And you gave it to your daughter to wear?" "She's careful with things. I thought—" Serena's voice faltered as she realized how this sounded. "I thought if anyone recognized it, they could claim it. I wasn't trying to steal it." For a long moment, Min-ho said nothing. His security team shifted restlessly behind him. Cars passed on the street. Somewhere in the park, children shrieked with laughter. But in this moment, 3 people stood suspended in a decision that would change everything. "It's mine," Minho said finally. "My grandmother gave it to me before I left Korea. I lost it 5 years ago." Serena's shoulders sagged. Of course, the one thing she'd found that might have value belonged to someone who looked like they could afford to lose it. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, reaching for Amara's necklace. "I didn't know. I should have tried harder to find you." But as her fingers touched the clasp, Minho spoke again. "Wait." She froze. He stepped closer, his eyes on the necklace, then on Amara's face. The girl looked terrified, clutching her mother's hand. Serena stood between them like she'd fight a dragon if needed, and something in Minho's chest, something he thought had died years ago in Korea's brutal streets, stirred to life. He'd spent 5 years searching for this necklace, 5 years offering fortunes, making threats, turning Chicago's underworld inside out. But in all that time, he'd never imagined this scenario. Never imagined it would be found by someone who actually planned to return it. In his world, people took. They stole, they lied, they betrayed for far less than this necklace was worth. But this woman, this exhausted, struggling woman who probably needed money more than anyone he'd ever met, had kept it safe. Had given it to her daughter, not to pawn, but to protect. "You kept it safe," he said slowly, each word weighted with meaning. "For years. Serena didn't know what to say. I didn't know what else to do with it." Minho looked at the necklace one more time, then at Serena's worn shoes, at Amara's patched jeans, at the grocery store vest that spoke of minimum wage and maximum effort. "I need to speak with you," he said. "Not here, somewhere private. But I promise no harm will come to you or your daughter." Serena's instinct screamed danger, but something in his eyes, something raw and honest, made her hesitate. "Why?" Minho's lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Because in 20 years of business in this city, you're the first person who's ever tried to give me something back instead of taking from me. And that, Ms. Johnson, Serena Johnson. Ms. Johnson, that deserves a conversation." 30 minutes later, Serena sat in a corner booth of a quiet Korean restaurant in Chinatown, Amara beside her, both of them staring at the man who'd turned their evening into something surreal. Minho had insisted on feeding them first, and Serena, who'd planned on mac and cheese from a box for dinner, hadn't had the strength to refuse. Amara devoured bulgogi with the enthusiasm of a child who didn't get meat often enough. Serena tried to eat slower, more carefully, but the kimchi jjigae was the best thing she'd tasted in months. Minho watched them with an expression she couldn't read. His security team sat at nearby tables, creating a bubble of privacy that made her simultaneously safer and more nervous. "How long have you lived in that neighborhood?" he asked. 7 years, Serena answered, wiping Amara's mouth with a napkin. "Since Amara was 2. And you work at the grocery store?" "Thompson's Market, yeah, day shift 5 days a week. Sometimes weekends when they need extra help." She didn't mention the cleaning job she did 3 nights a week at an office building, or the occasional catering gigs on weekends. Pride and exhaustion fought in her voice. Minho nodded slowly. "The necklace you found, do you have any idea what it's worth?" Serena's hands stilled. "I figured it was expensive. It's worth approximately $250,000, he said quietly. "The gold alone is worth $40,000. The jade is rare imperial green, the ruby is Burmese. But the craftsmanship, that's what makes it priceless. It was commissioned by my family in Seoul. Only 3 exist in the world." The blood drained from Serena's face. She'd been carrying $250,000 around her neck for years, had let her daughter wear it to the park like costume jewelry. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I swear, I didn't know." "I believe you," Minho said, and the certainty in his voice made her look up sharply. "If you'd known, you would have sold it, used the money to move somewhere better, to give your daughter more than—" He gestured vaguely at their worn clothes. "This." Serena's spine straightened. "We make do. I work hard. Amara has food, shelter, love. We're doing fine." "Are you?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Serena wanted to say yes, wanted to defend her life, her choices, her motherhood. But Minho's eyes saw too much, saw the exhaustion she carried like a second skin, the worry that kept her up at night, the calculations she did every month trying to make poverty stretch far enough to cover dignity. "The necklace is yours," she said instead, reaching for the clasp. "Amara, honey, we need to give it back." Amara's eyes welled with tears. "But Mama, I know, baby. But it belongs to Mr. Serena realized she didn't know his name. "Lee Min-ho," he supplied. Then to Amara, more gently, "You took good care of it. Your mama taught you well." Serena fumbled with the clasp, her fingers trembling slightly. When it came free, she placed it carefully on the table between them, the gold gleaming under the restaurant lights. Minho stared at it, 5 years of searching, of obsession, of revenge fantasies against whoever had stolen his grandmother's final gift. And here it was, returned by a woman who had every reason to keep it and no reason to give it back. He didn't touch it. "Ms. Johnson," he said slowly, "in my line of work, I deal with people who would kill for a fraction of what this is worth. I've seen men betray brothers for less. I've watched empires fall over smaller fortunes." He paused, his fingers drumming once on the table. "You holding on to this, planning to return it, that's not something I understand." "It wasn't mine to keep," Serena said simply. "Neither is most of what people possess." She met his gaze directly. "Maybe in your world. In mine, you work for what you have. You earn it. You don't take what doesn't belong to you." Minho felt something shift in his chest. His grandmother had said similar things, back when he was young and Seoul was still home, before survival had taught him different lessons. "I want to offer you something," he said abruptly. Serena's eyes narrowed. "I don't want charity." "It's not charity. It's—" He paused, choosing words carefully. "A business arrangement. I stock shelves and mop floors. What business could we have?" Minho leaned forward. "You found something valuable and protected it for years, waiting for the right moment to return it. That shows integrity, patience, trustworthiness." His voice dropped lower. "Those are rare qualities, qualities I need in my organization." "Your organization," Serena repeated slowly, understanding dawning. "You're not just some rich businessman, are you?" No, she should have been afraid, should have grabbed Amara and run, but something in her was tired of running, tired of scraping by, tired of watching her daughter wear second-hand everything, while rich kids in Lincoln Park had rooms full of toys. "What are you offering?" Minho smiled then, a real smile, and it transformed his face from dangerous to devastating. "A job, a real one. In one of my legitimate businesses, I own several properties in the city. Property management, bookkeeping, whatever suits your skills. Better pay than Thompson's Market. Healthcare, housing assistance. Why? Because you gave me back something I thought I'd never see again. Not for reward, not for recognition, because it was the right thing to do." He picked up the necklace, the gold warm in his palm. "In my world, Ms. Johnson, that makes you either very foolish or very brave. I'm betting on brave." Serena looked at Amara, who was watching the conversation with wide, intelligent eyes. Looked at the empty plates before them, the best meal they'd had in months. Looked at this dangerous, powerful man who was offering her something impossible. "I need to think about it," she said. Minho nodded. "Fair enough. But Ms. Johnson—" He stood, straightening his jacket, the necklace disappearing into his pocket. "In this city, opportunities like this don't come twice. Think quickly." Serena didn't sleep that night. She lay in her small apartment, listening to Amara's soft breathing from the twin bed across the room, and ran calculations in her head. Minho had left her his business card. Simple, elegant, with just a name and a phone number. No company name, no title. The kind of card that said everything by saying nothing. She should throw it away, should forget the whole encounter. Men like that, men with security details and restaurants that cleared tables at a snap of their fingers, they didn't help people like her without expecting something in return. But God, she was tired. Tired of the second job, the third job, the constant anxiety about rent, about food, about whether Amara's shoes would last another month. Tired of watching other mothers at the park with their strollers that cost more than her monthly salary. Their children in pristine clothes, their lives apparently untouched by the grinding weight of poverty. Her phone buzzed. A text from her night shift supervisor. "Can you cover tomorrow?" Sarah called out, sick. Another shift. Another night away from Amara. Leaving her 9-year-old daughter with Mrs. Chen from down the hall. A kind woman, but elderly and tired herself. Serena picked up Minho's card. The address he'd texted her was in River North, one of Chicago's most expensive neighborhoods. The building was all glass and steel, modern and imposing, and Serena felt distinctly out of place in her best interview outfit. A blazer from Goodwill and pants that were almost professional if you didn't look too close. The security guard in the lobby checked her name against a list, nodded, and directed her to the 15th floor. The elevator was faster and smoother than any she'd ridden before. Minho's office overlooked the Chicago River. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city like a painting. He stood with his back to the door, hands in his pockets, the white shirt he wore this time casually elegant, the top 4 buttons undone in a way that suggested power rather than relaxation. "Ms. Johnson," he said without turning, "I wasn't certain you'd come. I almost didn't." He turned then, a slight smile on his lips. "But you did." "Why?" Serena set her purse down on the chair beside her but didn't sit. "Because I have a daughter who deserves better than what I can give her working at Thompson's Market. Because I'm exhausted and angry and tired of being one unexpected expense away from homelessness." She lifted her chin. "And because you're right, opportunities like this don't come twice." "Honest," Minho observed. "Good. I value honesty." "What exactly do you value it for, Mr. Lee? What's this really about?" He moved to his desk, pressed a button on his phone. "Jae Sung, bring the folder." Moments later, his second-in-command entered, placed a manila folder on the desk, and left without a word. Minho opened it, turned it toward Serena. Inside were documents. Contracts. A job offer for a property manager position at one of his residential buildings. Salary, $75,000 a year. Benefits, comprehensive health insurance, retirement plan, housing allowance. Serena's knees went weak. 75,000. She currently made 28. "This is..." She couldn't finish the sentence. "Fair compensation for managing a 40-unit building," Minho said. "You'll oversee maintenance, handle tenant relations, coordinate with contractors. I'll provide training. The housing allowance covers a 2-bedroom apartment in the building, rent-free." "Why me? I have no experience with this." "You've kept an apartment for 7 years on poverty wages. You've raised a child alone. You've managed to maintain dignity and integrity in circumstances that would have broken most people." Minho's voice was calm, factual. "Those are exactly the skills I need." Serena sat down heavily. "What's the catch?" "No catch. You work for me. You do the job well. You and your daughter have stability, security, a future. And if I don't do the job well, then we part ways professionally. But I don't think that's a concern." He paused. "You protected something precious for years without knowing its value, Ms. Johnson. Imagine what you'll do when you actually have resources." She stared at the contract. The numbers blurred slightly. This was insane, impossible. People like her didn't get offers like this. "I need one thing in return," Minho said quietly. There it was. The catch. "What?" He picked up the necklace. He'd been wearing it since last night, she noticed. The phoenix gleamed against the ink of his neck tattoo. "I need you to keep being exactly who you are. Honest, hard-working, someone who does the right thing even when it costs them." He met her eyes. "My world has very few people like that, Ms. Johnson. I'd like to have at least one person in my organization I can trust completely. You don't know me. I know you had $250,000 and gave it back. That's all I need to know." Serena's hands trembled as she reached for the pen he offered. This was crazy. This was too good to be true. This was exactly the kind of decision that changed lives, for better or worse. But when she thought of Amara's patched jeans, of the apartment with heat that barely worked in winter, of the constant exhaustion that made her feel 40 instead of 33, she signed. Minho's smile was genuine. "Welcome to the team, Ms. Johnson." "Serena," she said softly. "If we're going to work together, call me Serena." "Serena," he repeated, testing the name. "I'm Minho." "No more Mr. Lee." She stood, still shaking slightly, the contract clutched in her hands like a lifeline. At the door, she paused. "Why are you really doing this?" Minho was quiet for a moment. Then, "My grandmother used to say that the universe keeps score even when we don't. You did something kind for a stranger without expecting anything in return. Maybe." He touched the necklace at his throat. "Maybe this is the universe settling accounts." Serena nodded slowly and left, carrying a future she'd never dared to imagine. Behind her, Minho stared out at Chicago's skyline, the phoenix necklace warm against his skin, and wondered when exactly he'd started believing in karma again. 3 months later, Serena stood in her new apartment, watching Amara do homework at a real desk in her own bedroom, and still couldn't quite believe it was real. The apartment was beautiful, hardwood floors, updated kitchen, windows that actually closed properly, heat that worked, hot water on demand. Amara had her own room for the first time in her life, painted purple at Serena's insistence that this was their home now, not just another temporary stop. The job was demanding but fair. Minho had been right about her skills translating. Managing a household on nothing prepared you remarkably well for managing 40 households with actual budgets. The tenants respected her, the maintenance staff listened when she spoke, and the contractors stopped trying to overcharge once word spread that she was under Lee Min-ho's protection. That protection was subtle but absolute. A plumber tried to inflate an invoice once. Serena mentioned it to Min-ho in their weekly meeting. The plumber not only corrected the bill but offered a discount and apologized profusely. She didn't ask what Min-ho had said. She didn't need to. "Mama," Amara called from her room. "Can Destiny come over Saturday? Her mum said it's okay." Serena smiled. Destiny was a girl from Amara's new school, a better school, in a better neighborhood, where her daughter's intelligence was recognized instead of overlooked. "Sure, baby, we can make pizza. Not box pizza, real pizza. The kind with actual toppings and cheese that melted properly." The buzzer rang. Serena checked the intercom. Min-ho. He'd taken to stopping by occasionally, ostensibly to check on building maintenance, but really, she suspected, to check on them. "Come up," she said, buzzing him through. When she opened the door, he held a bag from a Korean bakery she'd mentioned liking. "Thought Amara might enjoy these. You're going to spoil her." "That's the idea." He stepped inside and Amara immediately ran out to greet him. "Min-ho, look, I got an A on my math test." She thrust the paper at him proudly. He examined it seriously. "Excellent work. I knew that tutoring would help." Serena had protested when he'd offered to pay for a tutor, had argued she could help Amara herself, but he'd pointed out that she was already working full-time, and wouldn't she rather spend their time together, actually being together, not struggling through long division? He'd been right. Again. "Why don't you start on that pastry in the kitchen?" Serena suggested to Amara. "Then back to homework." When they were alone, Min-ho's expression grew more serious. "How are you really doing?" "Honestly? Sometimes I wake up and think this is all a dream." Serena gestured at the apartment. "That I'll open my eyes in the old place, and this will all have been some elaborate fantasy. It's real. You earned it." "Did I? All I did was return something that wasn't mine." Min-ho moved to the window, looking out at the city. "Do you know why I really hired you, Serena?" She waited, sensing this was important. "When I lost my grandmother's necklace, I became someone I didn't recognize. Ruthless, yes, I've always been that, but also bitter, convinced that everyone was out to take from me, that trust was weakness, that the only way to protect what mattered was to never let anything matter too much." He turned back to her. "Then you appeared, with your daughter, your honesty, your—" He searched for the word. "Your goodness. And it reminded me of why I fought so hard to get out of Seoul's slums, not to become rich, not to become powerful, but to create a life where goodness could exist without being punished for it." Serena's throat tightened. "Min-ho." "You gave me back more than a necklace," he said quietly. "You gave me back a piece of who I used to be, who I wanted to be, before survival required me to become something else." The moment hung between them, heavy with meaning Serena wasn't sure how to interpret. Was this gratitude? Something more? Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression shuddering. "I need to go, business." The word business could mean anything. Serena had learned not to ask. Her job was legitimate, completely clean. But Minho's empire extended into shadows she didn't want to examine too closely. "Be safe," she said instead. He paused at the door. "Always am." Then, softer, "Thank you, Serena, for taking the job, for trusting me, for—" He gestured vaguely, encompassing the apartment, their arrangement, whatever this growing connection between them was becoming. "Thank you for seeing me," she replied, "for seeing us as worth the investment. You're worth infinitely more than I could ever invest," Minho said, and left before she could respond. Serena stood at the closed door for a long moment, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. She'd accepted this job as a transaction, her skills for his money, her honesty for his protection. Clean, simple. But somewhere in the last 3 months it had become something else. Minho had been at Amara's school play, had brought Serena's favorite coffee to morning meetings, had remembered her birthday with a modest gift that somehow meant more than the expensive apartment he'd given them, and she'd found herself looking forward to his visits, had caught herself smiling at his dry humor, had noticed the way his eyes softened when he talked to Amara, the way his dangerous edges seemed to dull slightly when he stepped through her door. This was dangerous territory. Not because he was dangerous, though he absolutely was, but because she was starting to care, starting to wonder if the universe hadn't just settled her account, but started a new one entirely. In the kitchen, Amara laughed at something on her tablet. The sound, pure, joyful, unburdened, was everything Serena had fought for. Whatever was happening with Minho, whatever complicated feelings were growing between them, they'd figure it out. They'd already survived the impossible. A little hope couldn't be more dangerous than the life they'd left behind. Could it? The call came at 2 a.m. Serena fumbled for her phone, heart hammering. Calls at this hour meant emergencies, building fires, burst pipes, crises that couldn't wait. "Ms. Johnson?" Jae Sung's voice tight with controlled urgency. "There's been an incident. Minho asked me to bring you and Amara somewhere safe." "What kind of incident?" "The kind where people he cares about become targets. Get dressed. I'm downstairs." Serena's blood went cold. She'd known intellectually that Minho's world included danger, but she'd convinced herself it wouldn't touch them, wouldn't reach into the safe, clean life he'd built for her and Amara. She'd been wrong. 15 minutes later, they were in an SUV with tinted windows, Amara sleepy and confused in her arms, Jae Sung silent and tense in the driver's seat. "Where's Minho? Handling it. Is he hurt?" Jae Sung's jaw tightened. Not yet. They drove to a high-rise in the Gold Coast, ushered into a penthouse that screamed money and security. Bulletproof windows, reinforced doors, the kind of safe house that made Serena realize exactly how dangerous Minho's life actually was. "You'll stay here until it's clear," Jae Sung said. "Everything you need is provided. Don't leave, don't call anyone. Minho will contact you when it's safe." "What happened?" Jae Sung hesitated. "A rival organization learned that Minho values you and Amara. They thought they could use that against him." "They thought wrong?" A grim smile. "Very wrong. Minho doesn't negotiate when it comes to people he protects." After Jae Sung left, Serena tucked Amara into the master bedroom. California king, Egyptian cotton sheets, the kind of bed that cost more than their old monthly rent. Her daughter, exhausted and confused, fell asleep within minutes. Serena sat in the living room, watching the city lights and faced the truth she'd been avoiding for months. This life, the good job, the nice apartment, the stability she'd craved, came with a price. Minho's protection extended to them now, which meant his enemies did too. By accepting his help, she'd pulled Amara into a world where people became targets, where 2 a.m. calls meant danger, where safety required bulletproof glass. Her phone buzzed. "Minho. You and Amara safe?" "Yes. Jae Sung got us here. Are you okay?" A pause. Then, "I will be. I'm sorry. Serena, this shouldn't have reached you." She stared at the message. He was apologizing. As if this was his fault, as if offering her a better life meant he'd somehow betrayed her by bringing danger with it. "Can I call you?" "Not safe right now. Soon." Serena set the phone down and made a decision. Minho arrived at dawn, exhaustion in every line of his body. The white shirt he wore was splattered with blood. Not his, Serena noted with relief. His knuckles were bruised. The phoenix tattoo on his neck stood out starkly against skin pale with adrenaline crash. "It's handled," he said without preamble. "The threat's eliminated. You can go home. We need to talk." He closed his eyes briefly. "I know what you're going to say." "Do you? You're going to tell me this isn't what you signed up for? That you can't raise Amara in my world? That the apartment, the job, the security, it's not worth the risk?" He opened his eyes, and the pain in them nearly broke her heart. "You're going to walk away, and you'd be right to." Serena stood. "You're wrong." Min-ho blinked. "What?" "I'm not walking away, but we are going to establish some ground rules." "Serena." "First," she continued, moving closer, "you don't get to decide what risks I'm willing to take for my daughter's future. I've been making impossible choices my whole life. This is just another one. This isn't about grocery budgets and rent. No, it's about whether Amara grows up in poverty, struggling like I did, or whether she gets opportunities I could never give her. It's about whether I spend my life exhausted and afraid, or whether I build something better." She stopped inches from him. "You think I don't know what you are, what you do? I'm not stupid, Min-ho. I've known from the beginning." "Then why?" "Because everyone's dangerous in their own way. The landlord who threatened to evict us for being 3 days late on rent. The manager at Thompson's, who suggested I could keep my job if I was friendlier to him. The city that watches black kids like Amara and sees problems instead of promise." Her voice hardened. "At least your danger is honest. At least you protect instead of prey." Min-ho stared at her. "You're not making sense. I'm making perfect sense. You gave us a chance when no one else would. You've kept every promise you made. You've never treated me like I owe you anything beyond good work." She reached up, touching the necklace at his throat. "You're a good man pretending to be a bad one, and I'm a smart woman who knows the difference." "Serena," he breathed, covering her hand with his. "This life, my life, it's not safe, it's not clean. People get hurt. People get hurt everywhere. At least in your world, someone fights back." They stood there, hands touching, the necklace between them like a promise. Dawn light crept through the bulletproof windows, painting everything gold. "I can't offer you normal," Min-ho said quietly. "I can't promise there won't be more nights like this. I don't want normal. Normal got me nowhere. I want this, whatever this is. The job, the apartment, the security. You." The last word came out softer, more vulnerable. Min-ho's other hand came up to cup her face. "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." He kissed her then, gentle despite the violence still fresh on his hands. Serena kissed him back, tasting coffee and exhaustion, and something that felt dangerously close to hope. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "Ground rules? You don't make decisions about our safety without consulting me. I'm not a damsel to be rescued. I'm your partner." "Partner," he repeated, testing the word. Then stronger. "Partner, yes. And Amara's safety is non-negotiable, whatever it takes. Already handled. I've quadrupled security on the building, assigned personal protection, updated all protocols." "Good." She pulled back slightly. "Now go shower. You look like hell." Min-ho laughed, a sound so unexpected and genuine that Serena felt her decision confirmed. This man, dangerous, powerful, ruthless to his enemies, could still laugh, could still be reached, could still be saved maybe by a woman who'd learned to fight long before she met him. As he headed to the bathroom, he paused. "Serena, thank you." "For what?" "For not running, for choosing this, for—" He touched the necklace again. "For everything." She smiled. "Thank you for finding us in that park. For seeing worth in a woman who'd given up on being seen. I'll always see you," Min-ho promised, "from now until forever." Amara's 10th birthday party filled Min-ho's penthouse with laughter and chaos. Children from her school, friends from the building, even Mrs. Chen from their old neighborhood. Everyone Serena and Amara cared about, gathered in celebration. Min-ho stood at the edge of the festivities, watching Serena coordinate games and cake, with the same efficiency she brought to managing his properties. She'd expanded her role over the past year, now overseeing 3 buildings, proving every day that his faith in her had been justified. But more than that, she'd changed him, softened edges he'd thought were permanent. reminded him that power could protect instead of just destroy, that family could be chosen, not just inherited. Amara ran up to him, face sticky with frosting. "Min-ho, Mom says you have a present for me." He smiled, producing a small box. Inside, a delicate necklace, a phoenix smaller than his grandmother's but crafted by the same jeweler in Seoul. "For when you're older," he said. "To remember that sometimes what's lost can be found again. That kindness is never wasted. That family is what we make it," Amara finished, repeating words he'd said before. Serena joined them, slipping her hand into his. No ring yet. They were taking things slow, building something solid, but the promise was there. "Happy?" she asked. Minho looked at his penthouse full of life. At the child who'd led him back to his own humanity, at the woman who'd gambled everything on his capacity for good. "Completely," he said, and meant it with every fibre of his being. The necklace at his throat gleamed in the afternoon light, a reminder that sometimes what you think you've lost forever comes back to you, transformed into something even more precious.